If you've been anywhere near a gym or, frankly, just on social media in the last 10 years, you have seen Gymshark. It's the brand that absolutely exploded, going from a garage startup in the UK to a global fitness phenomenon. But behind that crazy growth, there's a really fascinating story of disruption, some serious vulnerabilities, and a high-stakes battle for the future. So let's dive into it.
Okay, first, let's just put a number on the table to get a sense of the scale here. $1.4 billion. That's the valuation this company hit. That's unicorn territory. I mean, that is an absolutely staggering number for a clothing brand.
But the really wild part, it's where that number came from. This isn't some old school brand that's been around forever. This whole empire was built from scratch starting in 2012. And get this, it was started by a 19-year-old kid named Ben Francis, who was literally sewing and screen printing clothes in his parents' garage. From a garage to a billion-dollar valuation in less than a decade. It's just incredible. So, that amazing journey really brings up two huge questions that we're going to break down right here. First off, how in the world did they pull that off? And maybe more importantly, now that they're playing in the big leagues with giants like Nike and Lululemon, can they actually hold on to the empire they've built? To really get Gymshark, you have to understand their playbook. See, they didn't just enter the fitness market. They completely rewrote the rules for how you build a brand in the social media age. Let's deconstruct exactly how they did it. So the absolute key to their success was this, the athlete influencer model. Think about it. While brands like Nike were shelling out millions for superstars, Gymshark took a totally different approach. They found fitness creators who were passionate, who were relatable, who were already building real communities online. This wasn't about some celebrity just holding up a product. It was about authentic connection. Their audience saw these athletes as friends, as peers, not just paid actors. And that creates a level of trust that you just can't buy.
And here you can see the genius of that strategy in the numbers. This chart shows what's called customer acquisition cost, or CAC, which is basically how much money you have to spend to get one new customer. Because Gymshark's marketing was fueled by all this organic community content, their cost to get a customer was 30 to 50% lower than their competitors. That is a massive advantage, a real superpower for a growing brand. It frees up so much cash to pour right back into making better products and hosting more community events.
Now, the other half of their secret sauce was selling directly to you, the customer, the DTC model. This gave them a huge advantage in speed. I mean, while the legacy brands were stuck in these super slow 6 to 12-month wholesale cycles, Gymshark was getting instant feedback. They could see what was selling in real time, and here's the kicker, they got to keep the full profit margin. And those margins, they were huge. We're talking 60 to 70%. That extra cash basically became their war chest. It was fuel for the fire. It went straight back into the business, funding more influencer partnerships, bigger events, and faster product development. It just created this powerful, self-feeding growth machine. And you really can't tell the Gymshark story without talking about its founder, Ben Francis. His journey isn't just some nice backstory. It's a core strategic asset for the company. The whole garage to CEO story, with no fancy MBA, no early investors, just pure hustle. That resonates so deeply, especially with a younger audience. It makes the whole brand feel real, human, and something you want to root for. Okay, but that kind of explosive growth almost always comes with some serious growing pains. The very things that made Gymshark such a powerful disruptor also, kind of ironically, created a unique set of vulnerabilities. Let's talk about the first crack starting to appear in this empire.
Right, let's talk about the actual product. When you put a pair of Gymshark leggings up against what many consider the gold standard, Lululemon's Align leggings, you start to see the issue. Now, Gymshark has a great price point, for sure, but if you look at reviews, you'll often see complaints about inconsistent quality and durability. Lululemon, on the other hand, has its proprietary Nulu fabric, which gives them a real technical edge. And all of this has led to this kind of nagging perception that Gymshark is like fast fashion for fitness.
And that really gets to their core weaknesses. Unlike Nike with its Air technology or Lululemon with its patented fabrics, Gymshark doesn't really have a defensible technology. There's no technical moat around their castle. They also have almost no physical stores, which creates a big try-before-you-buy problem. And maybe the scariest one of all, their entire marketing machine is built on social media platforms whose algorithms can just change overnight, which could totally kneecap their business.
Which brings us to a really fundamental question for their whole business, right? They have built this incredibly powerful, loyal community.
But in the long run, is that brand loyalty actually enough to win when you don't have a product advantage that competitors can't just easily copy?
So, you've got those internal issues bubbling up. Now, let's look at the threats coming from the outside. Because Gymshark isn't that scrappy underdog flying under the radar anymore. Nope. They are now facing a full-on billion-dollar gauntlet of competitors.
So first up is this massive threat from dupe culture. This is where you find these super cheap, nearly identical dupes or duplicates of popular items. You hop on TikTok and there are countless videos of people showing off $10 knockoffs from Amazon or Shein that look exactly like Gymshark's $60 leggings. This completely commoditizes their design and forces them to answer the question, why is your product worth 6 times more? And then there's just the mind-boggling scale of the competition. This chart really puts it into perspective. Gymshark is doing around 600 million pounds in revenue. Lululemon, almost $10 billion. And Nike and Adidas, combined, they're cruising past $100 billion. I mean, Gymshark isn't just fighting one Goliath, they're fighting a whole family of them. And here's the real danger. What happens when those giants start copying your playbook? Nike and Adidas are now dumping billions into DTC, into community building, into influencer marketing. When a company with 50 times your revenue and resources starts using your own strategy against you, it gets really, really hard to keep your edge.
So, all of this leads to the ultimate crossroads for Gymshark. They have to evolve if they want to survive. So what does that path forward actually look like? How do you scale up into a global behemoth without selling out the authentic soul that made you special in the first place? Well, a huge piece of the puzzle seems to be hybrid retail. The idea isn't to just open up hundreds of generic stores, it's to be really selective and open these amazing flagship locations like the one they have on London's Regent Street. And these places are more than just shops. They're designed to be community hubs, workout spaces, even content studios, real physical destinations that make that brand connection even deeper.
And beyond just stores, there are some massive growth opportunities just waiting. They can push way deeper into the women's athleisure market. That's a $100 billion plus space. They can really try to crack the US, which is the biggest market in the world. And they could even move into things like wellness and nutrition, getting more business from the loyal customers they already have.
So, this table really sums up the dilemma perfectly. They're at a fork in the road. They can choose to stay the disruptor, focus on their niche community, but they risk just stagnating and getting copied into oblivion. Or they can try to become a true titan, go for the mass market, but risk losing that authentic soul that everyone fell in love with.
And that really brings us to the bottom line, the core thesis here. Gymshark cannot win by trying to outspend Nike. It's just not going to happen. Their most powerful, most defensible weapon has always been their community. The winning strategy isn't to be a smaller, weaker version of the giants. It's to be something they simply can't copy. So, as we look ahead, what should we be watching for? Well, keep an eye on these key metrics over the next few years. Can they push their revenue up towards that £1 billion mark? Will they successfully open a handful of those new flagship community hubs? And can they really make the US a massive part of their business? These are going to be the signs that tell us if their strategy is actually working.
Which leaves us with the final billion-dollar question. This is more than just a business case study. It's really a test of whether authenticity can truly scale. Can a brand that was built on a genuine connection with its community become a massive global giant without sacrificing the very soul that got it there in the first place? Only time will tell.